you only knew how many YouTube videos, TikToks, comments, articles I've seen absolutely hating on Rory. Well, as someone who's watched Gilmore Girls literally 7 times, I've taken it upon myself to come to Rory's defense, because believe it or not, but she's actually my favorite character of the whole show, and one of my favorite characters ever, and I personally believe that a lot of the hate that she receives is unjustified, and I'm gonna tell you why. And if I'm being honest, I'm kinda scared to make this video because the Rory hatred runs so deep. But please listen all the way through before coming for me, and let's just get straight into it. Now, I cannot make a video about Rory Gilmore and not acknowledge the whole Dean affair situation. This is probably the biggest, or one of the biggest, things that people criticize Rory for. In season 4, Rory sleeps with Dean, who is married to Lindsay. Now, this is obviously a legitimate criticism, and we can all agree that Rory made a mistake. However, and I feel like no one ever brings this up, Dean is as much, and I would argue even more, at fault for this. Dean outright manipulated Rory, like no doubt about it. Like, before anything happens, Rory interrupts Dean, and she brings up Lindsay. And Dean tells Rory that it's not working with Lindsay, that they are not happy, and that his marriage was a mistake.
Lindsay.
It's not working with Lindsay. I can't make it work. I've tried.
Are you sure? Because I've heard that the first 2 years of marriage are the hardest.
We're not happy. It was a mistake.
Rory then advises him that maybe they could go see a counselor, and that she's heard that the first year of marriage was always the hardest. To which Dean responds by saying, and I quote, "It's over. We both feel it." And Rory doesn't just jump on him after hearing that. She wants to confirm, and she even asks him, "You and Lindsay, you both feel it's over?" And Dean doubles down, and he's like, "Yeah, me and Lindsay. I tried. We tried."
Maybe you could, go see a counselor or go away together.
No, it's over. We both feel it. I know, we both feel it.
You and Lindsay?
Yeah, me and Lindsay.
You both feel it's over.
I tried. We tried.
If it's over, I'm sorry.
Now, I am not saying that she is absolutely free of blame for sleeping with a married man, but she does stop him repeatedly and brings up Lindsay multiple times. And Dean tells her again and again that his marriage is absolutely over and that both him and Lindsay knew it. And we as the audience know that this is a lie because Dean didn't have any prior conversation with Lindsay about separating. But how could Rory know that? Like, he lied to her about the status of his marriage, and he absolutely manipulated her into getting with him. And yes, maybe Rory could have asked him, like, are you moved out? Are you in the process of getting divorced? And stuff like that. But this is Dean we're talking about. She trusted Dean, like he was her first boyfriend, her mom loved him, she felt safe with him. Why shouldn't she trust him? Why are we blaming Rory on not seeing the red flag and trusting Dean on his word rather than blaming Dean for lying about it, you know? And yes, maybe that Rory is naive, and I agree that the whole "he's my Dean" thing is wrong. But I don't know, I feel like I've seen so many videos saying that, like, oh, Rory slept with a married man, condemning her and using that mistake as a representation of her character. And a lot of people just ignore Dean's wrongdoings in this. Now, there's another thing that's been getting on my nerve, and if you knew how many TikToks and comments and Pinterest whispers I've seen of people saying things like Paris deserved to go to Harvard more than Rory, I just want to talk about it for 1 minute because more extracurriculars than Rory. But Rory had better SAT scores. She had a 760 in math and 740 verbal, while Paris scored 750 and 730 respectively. And also, let's not forget that Rory was the literal valedictorian, which means that her overall GPA was higher than Paris. Plus, Rory was also on the Chilton newspaper, so it's not like she didn't have any extracurriculars. And most importantly, let's not forget about their Harvard interviews. Like, Paris was literally screaming, entitled, and rude during her interview, constantly interrupting the interviewer, and if I recall correctly, didn't she go on about eugenics at one point?
Shouldn't even be taken into account. This dovetails nicely into my feelings about population control. It's a little hot in here. Can we do something about that? Anyway, population control has been dramatically successful in most European countries to the detriment of some, especially Italy, which is experiencing a marked drop.
Do you think this has anything to do?
Whoa, just let me finish my thought here.
But Paris.
Please.
Well, you said please. That's very polite.
On the other side, I can imagine that Rory probably aced her interview, so she has that going for her too. And I don't know much about the American college system, but I do know that I think they place some importance on their interviews, so I feel like the fact that Rory probably did good and Paris for sure did really bad had a role to play in that. And I'm sorry, but I'm not done talking about Paris. I know it doesn't seem like it, but I actually love Paris's character, but I've noticed this tendency that people kinda ignore or forget about Paris's wrongdoings, more remember her for her better qualities. And that kind of grace isn't extended to Rory. I saw a comment on a Gilmore Girls Reddit post, and I want to read it because I agree with a lot that's being said. So the commenter said, and I quote, "The audience loves Paris because she is so over the top that she becomes a non-character. But when you take her as a real person and judge her with the same standards as you would Lorelai and Rory, she is pretty terrible. She takes pleasure in making other people feel bad and bringing them down. She's like a Jess on steroids. She is incredibly arrogant and makes a point in letting other people know and feel how incredibly stupid they seem to her. She lacks basic human compassion." I love what they said about Paris not being judged by the same standards that Rory and Lorelai would, because I think that's really true. Like, can you imagine how much people would tear Rory's character to pieces if she had an affair with her 60-year-old university professor, cheating on her current boyfriend in the process?
Jeez.
So what age are we talking here? Like 35, 40? 45? 46? 47, 47 and a half, 48?
60.
What? Shut up!
He went to school with Grandpa. 60? That's how they met.
Like, people would destroy Rory, but we kind of forget about that with Paris. And yes, Rory wasn't always a perfect friend to Paris, but people seem to forget that Paris, first of all, not only literally bullied her in her first months at Chilton, but she also went out of her way to sabotage Rory in the school paper. She told the whole school about Mr. Medina and Lorelai kissing in order to hurt Rory. And when Rory gets elected as the new editor of the Yale Daily News, after Paris was voted out, she literally kicked Rory out of their apartment. But still, people only seem to think that, oh, Rory was a terrible friend to Paris and Paris deserved better. And again, I actually love Paris as a character. She's really entertaining and she has a lot of great moments. However, if we were to judge her with the same standards that we judge Rory, well, I think you can imagine. One of the reasons why I think people hold Rory to a higher standards than other characters is because we are introduced to her as the perfect daughter, the perfect girl who cannot do anything wrong. Like, she's kind, she's smart, she's beautiful, and she's absolutely beloved by literally everyone in town. And I kind of argue that they made her too perfect too early on. And what I mean by that is that, like, this is a TV show. They cannot make 7 seasons following a perfect Rory who does not do anything wrong. Or else the show would be absolutely boring and people would complain that Rory is a goody two-shoes and no one would relate to her. So when Rory starts to grow into a young adult and she starts making some mistakes, which I'm sorry, but this show follows Rory from the ages of 15 to 22. Like, every single young adult has felt lost at one point or another, and we all have made some questionable choices in our lives. However, since people fell in love with the perfect Rory, I think they hold her up to some impossible standards, as opposed to some other characters like Lorelai, Paris, and Jess, who we know from the beginning are imperfect, so we don't expect them to be perfect all the time. And let's get back to the Rory sleeping with married Dean for a minute, because people seem to forget that Lorelai actually did something comparable when she slept with Christopher, knowing that he was engaged to Sherry. And on some level, it's kind of even worse than what Rory did, because Lorelai was in her mid-30s and she actively knew that Christopher was engaged. But people empathize with Lorelai and they make excuses for her, because Lorelai was never presented to us as a perfect character. And that's okay, that's why we love her. However, when she does make a mistake, it doesn't surprise us because we know she's imperfect. So when she does make a mistake, the audience isn't too shocked. Another example of this is Jess. Jess has done some way worse things than Rory, but yet he's only remembered for his best moments, while Rory is only remembered for her worst. And again, I love Jess, and I wouldn't want every character in this show to be perfect because that would be boring and unrealistic. I just think that there is this double standard when it comes to Rory. Like, I saw a Miss Mojo video that put Rory at the top of their worst characters of all time list, which I'm sorry, but this is absolutely crazy. Yes, Rory is imperfect, but that's what makes us relate to her. She is multifaceted and sometimes acts in contradicting manners, like a real person. But to go as far as putting her on the worst characters of all time list is just insane to me and proves how imperfect female characters face more criticism than actual male villains. And also, if she had been perfect all throughout the show, I'm sure people would hate on her too. Like, she can't win. Okay, now we have to talk about Rory dropping out of Yale because I have a lot to say about that. In season 5, Rory gets told by Mitchum Hansberger that he doesn't think that she has what it takes to be a successful journalist.
I've got a pretty good gut sense for people's strengths and weaknesses, whether they have that certain something to make it in journalism. It's tough business, a lot of stress.
Definitely.
And I have to tell you, you don't got it.
Having just been told this by one of the biggest and most influential figures in journalism, Rory's confidence has understandably been damaged, prompting her to reconsider her goals. All of her life, Rory's ultimate goal was to go to Harvard and become a journalist. But we all know that most of the time, the goals that we set up for ourselves when we're really young will change and evolve as we age. Like, that's just normal. And in Rory's case especially, she's always had very prominent external expectations projected onto her. Her grandparents viewed her as their golden opportunity to have the perfect child that they never had. And to some extent, Lorelai kind of externalized the dreams that she missed out on onto Rory. And unpopular opinion, but I personally think that it was wise of Rory to take some time off to reflect if her personal goals coincided with the ones that were constantly projected onto her. Also, I think people take the whole Rory dropped out of Yale narrative way too far. Like, she literally missed out on 1 semester of school. Like, do you know how common it is for undergraduate students to take like a semester off or even a gap year to reevaluate their career goals? And something that I don't understand is that a lot of people act like Rory dropping out of school meant that she was lazy and totally gave up on her aspirations in exchange for a cushy existence in her grandparents' pool house. But I feel like people don't give enough credit to Rory. Like, if there is one thing that Rory is, it's that she's smart. Of course, she didn't plan on living in her grandparents' pool house all of her life and never going back to higher education ever again. She simply wanted to take some time to reevaluate her trajectory. And I actually think that that was the right thing for her to do at that time. Because through taking that semester off, she confidently realizes that yes, she wants to be a journalist. That she doesn't need anybody's approval, not Mitchum, not her grandparents, not her mom's, and that she does want to come back to school. And I think that that was a decision that she had to come to for herself. Because if her family forced her to stay at Yale, she would have for sure resented them, and she probably wouldn't have been as successful in her studies. Drive has to come from within, and if she was at Yale simply because her mom wanted her to, I doubt that she would have flourished as much as when she decided to come back on her own accord. And something that Rory actually expressed to Lorelai, but Lorelai didn't really grasp, is that you don't go to university, especially a super expensive, competitive, and prestigious university like Yale, just for the sake to be in university.
I told you, I just need some time.
You're making a mistake.
No, I'm not. This is normal. College kids take breaks like this all the time. I don't want to wander around a school where everyone else is focused and working towards something, and I'm just floating.
And during her time off, she didn't just sit around all day and do nothing. Like, she was literally planning and executing these major charity fundraising events. Like, do you know how impressive that is on a CV? Plus, through her work at the DAR, she made a bunch of important contacts, and she developed many important employable skills. Also, when she does come back to Yale after her semester off, she becomes the editor of the Yale Daily News. She takes extra classes, and she ends up graduating on time at 22 with honors. Not to mention that on top of all of that, she lands an incredible job straight out of university working for the Obama campaign. All that to say is that ultimately, I think Rory taking that time off ended up being very beneficial to her. She reevaluated her goals and priorities, and she came back even stronger. A common narrative I've seen in the Gilmore Girls fandom is that Rory was a brat that was handed everything without any obstacles. And when I see such remarks, I wonder if we were watching the same show. Not only was Rory the child of a teenage mom and was literally living in a shed up until she was like, 8 years old? But she also had many other obstacles on her way. She originally failed at Chilton, she originally struggled at the newspaper, same with Yale too in the beginning, and same with the internship. And every single time she failed, she picked herself back up, and not only did she survive, but she conquered. She was smart, she was a hard worker, and she was intentional and calculated with her life path. And I feel like people rarely credit her for that. And I know it's an unpopular take, but I personally love the fact that the writers included the whole Rory dropping out of Yale storyline, because it's really relatable to so many college students and young adults. I think that the main reason that people criticize Rory for dropping out is because the storyline of dropping out went hand in hand with the whole Lorelai and Rory fallout. And also the way that the grandparents went behind Lorelai's back and took her in without even consulting her, which kind of created a divide into two teams, Rory and the grandparents versus Lorelai. And understandably, people chose to side with Lorelai. Also, I feel like not a lot of people talk about the whole gifted child burnout thing, and I feel like Rory absolutely epitomizes that. I saw a Reddit post that talked about that, and I'm gonna read you a comment that resonated with me. This is why I defend Rory so ardently. She was being crushed by the insurmountable weight of everyone's expectations. She had to be perfect, get good grades, be the glue keeping her precarious family together. She didn't crumble because she was entitled and couldn't take Mitchum's criticism. She crumbled because Mitchum voiced her biggest fear, which was that she wasn't good enough no matter how hard she tried. Okay, another thing I have to address, I've seen so many people saying something along the line of Mitchum was right, Rory didn't have it, and Mitchum wasn't being mean, just honest. Now let's nip this in the bud because I don't think that he was justified in saying that for many reasons. Firstly, he could have given her some constructive criticism during the internship, giving her the opportunity to actually learn and improve, instead of making her believe that she was doing great and waiting until the last moment to absolutely destroy her. And also, he didn't criticize her. He spoke down to her and he used his position of authority to demolish her. He wasn't constructive either. He simply told her that she didn't have it and that he was rarely wrong about his intuition. Oh, and also that she'd be a better secretary. I think that Mitchum's comment was very intentional and that he knew exactly how much it would hurt Rory. I actually suspect that it was his intention all along to break and discourage her. Like, first the Huntsberger family was horrible to her and tried to break her and Logan up, and then he just swoops in with the internship allegedly to make up for it, only to tell her that she doesn't have it. I really think that Mitchum gave Rory the internship with the pure intent to humiliate her. Like, I'm sorry if I don't buy that Mitchum just gave Rory the internship out of the goodness of his heart because he felt bad. Like, he doesn't seem to be a very charitable person based on all that we've seen of him in the show. And also, I feel that people forget that Rory was what, like 19, 20 during her internship? Like, obviously she wasn't gonna be the best journalist ever, but Mitchum could have been an actual mentor and just tell Rory that she should show more initiative. And I'm sure that Rory would have happily jumped on that. Also, I think it's pretty arrogant of him to tell her that he's rarely wrong about these things and that his gut is always right. Like, I'm sorry, but we've seen time and time again that Mitchum was a privileged, manipulative bully, and I think that we should think twice before justifying or even praising him intentionally hurting a 19-year-old Rory. Now, I've spent most of the video so far defending Rory, but I actually have two valid criticisms. Firstly, when she's sent to review a ballet production and she criticizes the ballerina, comparing her to a hippo and basically just criticizing her weight. It's in moments like these that I'm reminded that this show is a product of the early to mid 2000s, and every time I rewatch this episode I absolutely cringe. Like, Rory saying that was absolutely uncool, uncalled for, and uncharacteristically mean of her. The second instance where I agree with the Rory criticism is with the whole boat stealing thing. Like, I understand why the writers included that storyline. It stirred things up and it added some needed drama to the show, but every time I rewatch it I just don't understand how Rory could do something so careless without thinking of the repercussions. Like, again, if there's one thing that Rory is, it's that she's smart, and I feel like it's so out of character for her to do something so impulsive and careless. Nonetheless, stealing the boat was absolutely stupid. However, it also represented Rory's rock bottom, and the fact that that was so out of character for Rory kind of proves how big of a cry for help it was in a way. But yeah, anyway, it was stupid, and just let me know what you think about that storyline. In conclusion, is Rory a privileged and perfect millennial that can be a bit annoying at times? Absolutely. But I personally don't think that she is the villain that everyone loves to make her out to be, and to her core I think that Rory is a good person. Yes, she has made some mistakes, but in my opinion none of them are absolutely irredeemable, and if you couldn't have picked up on it throughout the video, I actually have a huge soft spot for Rory, and she's one of my absolute favorite characters ever. And yeah, I just wanted to add my 2 cents to the whole Rory is the worst discussion. Honestly, this whole conversation made me think a lot about how some people will go to lengths to glamorize actual male villains, like the Joker for example, but will subsequently antagonize female protagonists for the most trivial reasons. Not that every criticism is trivial, but I think that this might have been the case with Rory. Kind of. But anyways, I would love to hear what you think about this whole conversation in the comments, and please don't come for me for defending a fictional character from a 20-year-old show. But kidding aside, thank you very much for spending this time with me. I hope you enjoyed, and hopefully we'll see each other next time. Bye!